around that like 14-hour mark is typically where you may feel some hunger. Sometimes or oftentimes the hunger cue that we get is really our body asking for water.
When you say, what's the hunger cue? When you say that, what do you mean?
You can have a psychological cue, and sometimes you can have a physical cue, right? When you have like that pit in your stomach or a pain in your stomach, oftentimes that hunger cue is really our body
a little
wanting
headache,
more water.
Maybe.
Yeah, a little bit of a headache, and that's that dehydration. Your body's really wanting water, and so for me,
so people shouldn't be they shouldn't be nervous about that. They shouldn't be upset about that. It usually
normal.
Goes away.
Yeah,
right?
It'll come, and oftentimes as you drink more water, or as you fast, you typically drink more water to subsist on during that time period, and those cues become less and less.
Hey, this is Dr. Ben Cilento with Vital Discourse and Dr. Lee. Today we're going to be talking about nutrition. We have a whole series providing expert advice on nutrition. Today we're going to be tackling fasting, benefits and myths. One of the hottest topics in nutrition, fasting, specifically intermittent fasting, things like time-restricted eating, 16-8, 5-2 approach, alternate day fasting. Is it a game changer for weight loss and metabolic health and longevity, or is it a little bit overhyped with some hidden risks? We're getting fatter in America. We're getting more chronic disease. And for the third year in a row, our average lifespan is decreasing. So there are some things that are going off the rails. One of them is nutrition. One of them is the way we eat. And so once again, we have the great Brandon Ward here, who's affiliated with Dr. Lee Mandel. And Lee's going to introduce him, and we're going to get started.
Yeah, I'm once again honored and delighted to introduce my good friend and personal trainer, Brandon Ward. Brandon is a former Division I collegiate athlete who has spent the last 18 years bridging the gap between high-performance athletics and everyday health. He holds a dual master's degree in injury biomechanics and exercise physiology from Florida State University, making him a go-to resource for training that is both effective and safe. As a certified strength and conditioning specialist and level 2 nutrition coach, he doesn't just guess, he knows. He's currently a gym owner and health coach dedicated to helping people build stronger, resilient bodies. And if you happen to live in South Florida, the name of Brandon's gym is The Ludus, which is located in Weston, Florida.
Thank you, Lee. Nice to join you fellas again.
Great to have you back.
So, Brandon, can you tell us what is intermittent fasting? How does it work? Do you do it?
So let's start with, I definitely do it. I do fasting every day, about 16 hours. But intermittent fasting refers to the intentional act of fasting for a period of time. Can be as low as 12 hours or moving on to, 24, 48, 72, depending on what your lifestyle dictates. But that sweet spot for most people typically is around 14 to 16 hours. And there are a lot of health benefits that come from fasting that we see that's been shown in literature.
So, evolutionarily, our bodies are kind of made for this. And it's because, we're not really nocturnal creatures. And throughout history, we kind of, when the lights go down, we want to stay away from all the things that do hunt at night. So we kind of curl up. We didn't have refrigerators. We'd wait the 12 hours until the sun came up again, and then we went out, and it took us a while to get the next meal. So typically, as civilization developed, you have the breaking of the fast. Breakfast was the first meal of the day, and it was about 12 to 16 hours later. And so our body is kind of made to go through this cycle, but we've come away from it. So talk to us about some of the other types and what are the proven benefits of fasting. What do we see in somebody who's has a fasting lifestyle?
So there are a lot of benefits that have been shown. You talk about cellular autophagy. You talk about increased insulin sensitivity and regulation of blood sugar. Talk about optimization of human growth hormone, fat oxidation and metabolic efficiency. We can even talk about cognitive clarity. There's been shown that there's a neurotropic factor, brain-derived neurotropic factor that gets produced more as you're fasting. And then oftentimes reduction of like systemic inflammation. So people who are dealing with inflammation throughout their body, you can see a reducing that inflammation as well over time with fasting. There are a whole host of different, benefits to it. And it comes down to being intentional with how you fast.
In the International Journey of Obesity in 2011, there was a great study by Harvey et al. And it showed that intermittent fasting was a lot better than just calorie restricting. So to Lee's point, in many episodes, he always talks about the problem with docs. When a patient comes in, they're overweight, and the doc says, well, you got to lose weight, you got to change your diet, or you have to eat better. What the heck does that mean?
Or
and
eat
then
less.
they go home and they're lost. They know they need to eat better, but they're kind of lost. If you just calorie restrict in an ongoing fashion, you don't do as well. You don't lose as much. But it's been shown in multiple studies, not just the Harvey study, that intermittent fasting is a much better way to control and maintain weight, just from an obesity standpoint, but also cardiovascular health. What are the optimal ways? And I know that there are people that do fasting for much longer than 16 hours. What are the best ways out there to do it? What's the spectrum of ways that are available to people? And how long do you recommend fasting when you do a longer fast?
So I would say we talk about the different spectrums or which ways to fast. I would say 12 hours is going to be that standard or where you should start. Ideally, you're talking about a fast, you're going to be talking about 12 hours. So again, we don't want to eat within 3 hours of going to bed. We want our last meal to be about 3 hours before we're going to bed. So typically, let's give a general time frame. If someone's going to bed around 10 p.m., that means you want your last meal between 6 and 7 p.m. You extrapolate that out to when most people are waking up and getting ready to start their day. That's going to be around 7 a.m. when you wake up. And that would be a general time where someone would normally break their fast. But you can extrapolate that out to 14, 16, 18 hours, and even longer, 24, 36, or moving forward. You just want to make sure with those longer fasts, when you're talking about the 24, 36, 48, 72, whatever those timeframes are, that you're maintaining hydration levels and electrolyte and micronutrients at the same time.
I would just add to that depending on your body composition, if you're someone that is very low weight, very minimal fat to begin with, especially if you start going to those longer fasts, you really need to watch it, right? And I would say that it's probably a good rule of thumb that if you're doing a fast 48 hours or more, you should probably make sure that you're under a doctor's care so that we know that you can do something like that safely.
Yeah, so Brandon, my question is, if you're fasting most mornings and not eating, when do you work out?
Ideally, so this is going to be lifestyle dependent, but ideally, I would work out in the morning while I'm fasting to speed up some more of that body fat, loss and body composition change. By and large, most times I work out after my first meal. So typically, my first meal is going to be somewhere between 2 and 3 p.m. And then my workout is going to be about an hour and a half after that, just dependent specifically on my schedule.
So do you take anything in at all in the morning? Are you drinking things? If you're drinking water, you're drinking tea, black coffee, anything like that?
I'll typically drink a green tea and water. In that fasted window, I'm usually consuming somewhere between 40 to 64 ounces of water in that morning time frame.
Are you adding like MCT oil or anything like that, like a bulletproof type of coffee?
I don't drink coffee, but to my green tea, I sometimes add MCT oil, not often, but by and large, it's mostly just water and green tea that I would drink in the morning.
And we'll go through that. When we start, we have another episode where we'll talk about specific diets and that type of thing that's become part of the ketogenic diet. But
do you take supplements with your water in the morning?
Me personally, no.
No. Do you take any supplements at all?
I'll do protein after post-workout, and then typically after my first meal, I'm having any vitamins and things that I'm having. So my multivitamin, omega-3, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so you do it with your food later in the day, not in the morning.
Yes.
That's your routine.
Yes.
So Brandon, we tell our kids, well, I don't know that you and I do or that Ben does, but generally speaking, we tell our kids when they wake up in the morning, you've got to eat something because you're not going to have any energy, right? Especially if it's on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning and they're going to a football game or whatever it might be. Are we wrong?
That's kind of more indoctrination, though, really, right? I mean, that's not really true, right, Brandon?
Yeah, I think that kind of stuff started, back when we had the introduction of the food pyramid and, eat your cereal, drink your milk, have your
It
healthy
started
grains,
before
etc.
that. It's that the food pyramid came out, and we're going to talk about this in another episode, but the food pyramid came out in 1992, but back in the turn of the century, and not this last century, the 1800s to 1900s, when Kellogg's was coming up, they created the breakfast paradigm. I think anybody can get online and look this up now, but it wasn't well known before. We created the breakfast we have right now. People have always eaten a breakfast. We've always broken the fast, but it was usually a high protein meal of sausage and meats and eggs. Typically, the breakfast cereal craze started in the 1900s here in the U.S.
Yeah, and I think that's where that indoctrination comes from is you've had multiple generations of people who've been told the same thing, and we kind of just roll with it without, looking to evidence or even looking back to our past history in terms of evolution and whether or not that is going to be beneficial.
Totally agree.
And just as a disclaimer, since we were talking about kids, the American Academy of Pediatrics actually does not recommend fasting in children. And I don't think we're talking about having children go through the type of intermittent fasting that Brandon was talking about, but just to the extent that the breakfast isn't quote unquote the most important meal of the day, and we'll get back that into when we're talking about more of our
but it's
nutrition.
also what we're having for breakfast changed
right.
from high protein to cereals. But that's what we were talking about.
But the thing is that when our child wakes up, we don't have to force feed them a bunch of food, a bunch of carbohydrates or whatnot before an activity. You can wait till after the activity, and you'll be fine. Okay, they'll have just as much energy, and it will be fine.
Yeah, and making sure that when we are, feeding our children or ourselves, that, going to high carbohydrate meals as the first go-to is not ideal. You want to be focusing on your healthy fats and your lean proteins. That's where that primary good energy is going to come from.
And this is where the indoctrination from, unfortunately, from the cereal lobby, right, and the people that keep feeding me muffins in the morning, they want to keep us with that carbohydrate, keep that carbohydrate going, sell more muffins, sell more cereal.
So with that said, we're gonna start talking about some of the longer fasts that we do and some of the health benefits of it. But before we move on from this, let's kind of bust some myths here. So fasting tanks your metabolism, and that is that true or false?
That's false. That's definitely false.
Yeah, it's very false. Yeah, short-term fasting can boost metabolism.
Correct.
Via norepinephrine. Long-term, it doesn't slow it more than calorie restriction, and it often preserves it a lot better, actually. So there's no starvation mode per se in IF. So myth 2, you'll lose tons of muscle. You'll lose all your muscle.
Also false.
Also false, right. You're seeing the pattern here. So intermittent fasting actually preserves lean muscle. In fact, once you go through the processes that we talked about on another episode, which is first you burn through all of your stored glycogen, then your liver kicks in at about 12 to 16 hours in gluconeogenesis, and then you go after 16 to 24 hours, you go into ketogenesis, and you start burning the fat appropriately. And we've heard a lot of people online talk about keto and ketogenesis, but once you get into it, it's a very healthy way of saving muscle and burning fat. Myth 3, it causes eating disorders or poor nutrition when you fast.
Also false. Typically, if you're fasting, you're more intentional about what you're eating, as opposed to eating disorders or disordered eating, rather.
Yeah. Exactly right. There's no evidence of that at all, although I do hear that quite a bit, that people that fast or restrict themselves probably have some underlying bulimia or anorexia. It's absolutely not true. So this myth is actually quite important. It harms hormones and fertility.
I haven't heard that. I've heard that one before, but I'm gonna assume that's also false.
Oh yeah, no. Listen, a lot of women don't want to fast and talk about not fasting because they're worried about fertility, and they're worried about their hormone levels. Sex hormones are unchanged in all studies across the board. It doesn't. In fact, testosterone boosts slightly in men and women, but in men more. One of the things that I like to think of is sort of the 30,000-foot view evolutionarily. I mean, you're going to want to be at a very fit, active, and aware level at the time that you're going to be hunting for your next meal. It's not going to slow you down as you start to get into this longer phase of fasting. A lot of the things that you're going to need, the energy, the muscle, the acuity, the brain cognition, are all going to come to bear on you getting your next meal. So to me, it makes sense evolutionarily.
I think it's also important that, Ben talks about it a lot. It's not when you eat, it's what you eat. So I think a lot of these myths are supposing that what you eat is not adequate. And as long as when you do start eating, you're eating an appropriate diet, it should not have any negative effect.
Absolutely. Hey, Brandon, also I have a question for you. So have you done longer fasts, and can you walk people through what you'll be feeling in it? Because not everybody's used to waiting until noon the next day to eat after they've eaten their PM meal. They go to sleep and they wake up and wait till noon. Not everyone's used to that. What can you expect to feel from there on through to a 24 and 48-hour fast?
Well, the first thing is breaking up habit, right? Oftentimes, that first meal in the morning is typically habit based. You've gotten used to getting up and grabbing something and shoving it in our mouth, and it's not really even an intentional breakfast. We're not typically sitting
like the muffin.
Wasn't trying to attack Lee, but generally we're not really sitting down, being intentional, making a full breakfast, and taking time to digest and eat that food in a manner that's going to serve our bodies, right? It's usually going to be rush, get out the door. So oftentimes that AM meal is just habit based. So the first thing that first friction point I'm going to say you're going to encounter is breaking that habit, is trying to get out of that cycle of grabbing something out and going out the door, eating while you're driving, dropping kids off, sitting down at your desk to work. But once you break that habit, you'll typically see a lot of clarity in your day. You're able to get to task without even thinking about food. Around that 14-hour mark is typically where you may feel some hunger. Sometimes or oftentimes the hunger cue that we get is our body asking for water. So you'll, as you fast longer, be able to differentiate.
When you say, what's the hunger cue? When you say that, what do you mean?
You can have a psychological cue, and sometimes you can have a physical cue, right? When you have that pit in your stomach or a pain in your stomach, oftentimes that hunger cue is really our body
a little
wanting
headache,
more water.
Maybe.
Yeah, a little bit of a headache, and that's that dehydration. And your body's really wanting water, and so for me,
people shouldn't be they shouldn't be nervous about that. They shouldn't be upset about that. It usually
normal.
Goes away. Right?
Yeah, it'll come, and oftentimes as you drink more water, or as you fast, you typically drink more water to subsist on during that time period, and those cues become less and less. As you continue with that fast, it needs to be intentional, because when you get really good or really used to fasting, the food noise really does go away, and you have enough mental clarity to get through most of your tasks without even thinking about what that next meal is going to be. And so you have to be really intentional at when you're going to break your fast and what meal you're going to break your fast with. Don't just go and be ravenous and grab the first thing that comes to mind or the first thing that's in front of you or any of the cravings you may have. The goal is going to really be...
What's good? What do you break your fast with?
Yeah, the goal is really going to be to have something that's a high protein meal, but a lean protein. So you're not going out and getting, a fatty cut of steak, but you want to get a lean protein meal with a healthy fat. And some kind of a fibrous vegetable also is going to help.
So I own a ranch, and I have a butcher shop, and we have fully grass-fed, grass-finished beef. And when I end my fast, that's what I end it with. A nice lean cut, a New York strip kind of cut. I'll slice that thing up, and it's noticeably different in the supermarket than the meat my wife sometimes gets from the HEB here. When it's grain fed, you put the two side by side, and mine is smaller, no fat marbled through it, deep red with a nice rind of very, very white fat around it. So when you're saying lean protein, in my mind, that's what I see. I see a nice big grass-fed, grass-finished piece of beef sitting there. What's your protein?
Yeah, it's typically going to be that. It's going to be grass-fed, grass-finished beef.
Are you a New York strip guy, or are you like a ribeye?
I love ribeyes, but typically if I'm breaking a fast, it's going to be New York strip or filet. I'm going to pair that up with avocado and some fibrous vegetable, be it, cauliflower, broccoli, asparagus, etc.
So what about eggs?
Eggs are great.
Eggs are fantastic.
So I want to make sure that people understand that, you don't have to go out and spend the money and get a fillet to break the fast. You can use eggs. They're a great source of protein, great source of nutrients.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to buy packaged protein powders. A lot of people want to go and buy a processed protein thing. It's just regular food, macro food that you get from the grocery store around the edges, not in the middle.
Yeah, a lot of it is food quality, right? And making good decisions in the quality of food that you get, right? Getting grass-fed, grass-finished beef, getting pasture-raised organic chicken and eggs. So typically we want to have we want to eat food and eat animals that eat their native diet, right? What we eat what our food eats as well. So if you're having, the conventional proteins, be it grain-fed.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah,
I like that.
You're having the grain-fed, cows and the chickens who are in the coops who are eating all the different things. You're getting all of the nutrients or lack thereof that they're getting because you're eating their meat. You're eating their tissue. So you want to make sure to eat proteins that ate their native diet because that's where you're going to get the most nutrients. You're going to have the least inflammation. You're going to be able to source those nutrients into building healthy tissues for yourself.
Ben, tell us first just what's the difference between grass-fed and grass-finished?
So it's a great question. So first of all, in general, what's wrong with feeding cows grain? I mean, why is that a bad thing? Well, look, a lot of the grains that we feed the cows in this country cause some dysbiosis. So the cows get bloated and they don't feel good, so they give them a massive shock of antibiotics to try to calm that down. And that cycle continues. So they get a little bit underweight and they don't grow properly, so they inject them full of hormones. So their diet causes a sequence or a cascade of events that makes it fairly unhealthy for you to eat it. Because to Brandon's point, you're eating that animal and that animal is not healthy. So if you just let the cow go out and eat what it normally does, which is a bunch of grass, it does great. And it doesn't need all the antibiotics and hormones. They're slightly smaller. They're a smaller animal, so they don't get the return on investment per pound when they're selling it. But if that animal grows up on and is fed grass its entire life, and when they say finished, they mean the last 3 months of their life. So you may have an animal that's been fairly unhealthy on grain for most of its life, and then the last 3 months before slaughter, they feed it on grass, and that they used to do that to get around the grain issue and call it grass-fed, but they fortunately came in and said, hey, you can't say that anymore. So you look for one that's pasture-raised, grass-fed, and grass-finished, and then you know that its whole life has just been like a regular cow.
And then the other thing that I wanted to hit on is Brandon talked about inflammation. So this whole idea, and we talk about inflammation a lot, the inflammation really is tethered to the carbohydrate. So carbohydrates, generally speaking, cause inflammation. And so when we're talking about increasing our protein intake and our healthy fat intake and decreasing our carbohydrate intake, when we say that we're diminishing inflammation, that's the reason.
So one thing I wanted to chat about right at the end here is to move forward on my last question to Brandon, which is go ahead and take us through. So you've taken us through to about 24 hours. I know I do a 72-hour fast every 6 months or so. It's not easy, but it's gotten easier over time. As he put it, as you decrease the food noise. I want to unpack that a little bit because people are gonna try this, and I think they want to know what to expect and how you get through it. I'm going to talk a little bit about right afterwards why it's important to try it for a lot of people, mainly because it does have incredible health benefits. But talk us through a longer fast from 24 hours to 72 and what that feels like.
So when you're talking about going to a longer fast, it doesn't mean that you're not ingesting any nutrients into your body at all. There are different ways and methods of fasting, and there are different schools of thought around fasting. Some people believe that if you ingest any calories at all, that's going to be taking you out of your fast. Personally, from what I've seen in research, it's going to be more tied around carbohydrates and the amount of carbohydrates that you consume. So when you're talking about a longer fast, sometimes it's good to supplement with some bone broth, bringing in some of the healthy fats and things like that in small quantities to help you get through that longer fast. But again, that food noise will eventually fall off, and you definitely want to make sure you hydrate. You're going to make sure you keep your electrolytes up, and continue to kind of push through until a dedicated specific point in time. Everything that I coach people through and that I've done myself is when you're fasting, it has to be intentional. You want to make sure that you are starting that fast at a specific time, you're ending that fast at a specific time, that you're focusing on hydration and micronutrient balance and getting in electrolytes during that period of time. And then you're intentional about what nutrition you put in your body at the end of that fast.
So, Brandon, you just said keep your electrolytes up. So, what's the best way to do that? I mean, does just someone drink Gatorade, that has sugar in it as well when they're doing that? Or is there some specific way you can keep your electrolytes up without introducing sugar?
Well, definitely not Gatorade. Anything with the word Gator in it is not going to be recommended. But I use a supplement called 40,000 volts from Trace Minerals that has some micronutrients and minerals as well as electrolytes in it, and no added sugar. It's really just a couple of drops in your water, and kind of gives you the amount that you need. You can do a pinch of Himalayan sea salt. You can do a couple of drops of citrus juice like lemon into your water, but focusing on keeping those electrolytes up are going to be something very, very important.
I do a little bit of chamomile tea too, Lee, and I'll put a small amount of lemon in it, and it helps. And I make up big batches of it. But I can tell you that after 24 hours, making it through 24-hour fast is challenging. And once you go to sleep that second night without any food, when I wake up in the morning, this bizarre calm comes over me. And I actually, the second 24 hours is easier than the first. Once you break through that barrier, what Brandon is fantastically calling the food noise, it dies away and it's not there anymore. And I'm very productive. I'm almost on this kind of high where I feel like I've had some coffee or something, and I'm kind of I'm buzzing through my day and feeling really good actually. As you turn the corner onto the third night, and you're past your 48 hours, it starts to get a little tougher into the 72-hour mark. But if you look inside the body physiologically at what's happening at those things, at the 24-hour mark, your body shifts over and starts using, instead of using glucose, it starts using the ketones. So you're in the ketogenic period in your fast. But as you move from ketones and losing weight, you'll actually see on your InBody. I have an InBody also at my wellness center, and I've taken it through these. You'll drop 2, 3, even 4% body fat over a 72-hour fast. At the 48-hour mark, you start to go into autophagy, and that's the work of Anna Maria de Cuervo from Albert Einstein College of Medicine, where I went. She did a lot of work on what starts to happen because you need fuel. Your body needs fuel. And where's it going to get it from? It's not coming from oral intake. So it has to decide in a pre-programmed way, what cells and what nutrients to start taking, because all the general ones are gone. Your glycogen is gone. Your liver has exhausted its ability for gluconeogenesis to a certain extent. You're into ketogenesis. You don't want to dissolve muscle. And so you start looking for cells that need to be eaten up. They're damaged in some way. Their DNA is damaged. And so this is the work that she did looking at reduction in cancer. And so from 48 hours on, especially at 72 hours, but 72 hours, your body is revved up in the autophagy, and it reaches its peak, promoting a significant cellular rejuvenation. So you really do come out of the 72 to 80-hour fast basically a different person. You're lighter. You're leaner, and presumably less cancer cells or potential cancer cells sitting in your body. Kind of an amazing process that our body goes through.
And the interesting thing is, Ben talks about cancer. Cancer cells are rapidly growing, rapidly dividing cells. They need a lot of energy, and they need it fast. So when you're fasting, or even a true ketogenic type of diet, and you're decreasing the glucose that's available to the cancer cells, they can't divide as rapidly, they can't grow as rapidly, and that's where you get that anti-cancer effect from diminishing the carbohydrate and the glucose available.
I want to say one thing I want to say about fasting is the beauty of it is, one, it's free. Right? There's no barrier of entry. You can do it at any point in time. And two, evolutionarily, you can see how well our bodies are built to do these things, these amazing things that can help us in terms of longevity and health.
Well, thanks, Brandon. Thanks again for your expertise. It was wonderful having you. We're going to have you on for another segment when we go over nutrition and diet more intensely. Great podcast. And once again, thank you all for tuning into Vital Discourse.